Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Amy. I'm an ecologist living in Ireland and I love plants, if that wasn't obvious by the background. Today I thought it would be a good idea to give you a rundown of begonias. A little bit of background on the genus very briefly and then show you each of the begonias that I actually grow in my collection. As a bit of a background, if you don't know, I'm not like massively into begonias. I have a couple and I have had a lot of these for a couple of years now. I'm definitely not someone that likes to dabble in some very tricky begonias in terms of care, ones that require really strict humidity. That is not in my houseplant care style at all. I am much more of a hands-off type of person. I don't enjoy plants that I guess require some really specialist care. It ends up generally stressing me out, and if the plant isn't going to survive as things are here, then it's just not going to survive, and that's the way that it is. So I don't really dabble in that kind of stuff, but a lot of the begonias I have are pretty common. I don't have any super rare ones. I don't have a terrarium set up or anything like that. It is something I might get into in the future because I am really enjoying my carnivorous plant terrarium. I have other videos on that if you're interested, but I'm really enjoying that, so maybe it will be a project in the future, but not right now. So that's kind of where I am with that. I will run through each of the plants that I do have. A lot of them are cultivars. That's a huge thing when it comes to begonias. Begonias are one of the biggest genera of flowering plants actually in the entire world. There are over 2,000 described species and they've been around for a very long time. The name begonia actually came about from a guy called Charles Plumier, who was a French patron of botany, and he named this after Michel Begon, which was a former governor of the French colony of Saint-Dominique, which is now known as Haiti. And Linnaeus adopted this naming as well in 1753, so this is quite a while ago. The range of begonias goes from tropical to subtropical climates all across to central China. So it has quite a wide range, and as I noted, there are a lot of different described species. In general, however, you either have rhizomatous begonias or tuberous begonias. They're kind of separated into two sections. So obviously tuberous would mean they grow from tubers, and this would indicate that they are a little bit more forgiving when it comes to dry periods. So the tubers can hold a bit more water, and these would generally be begonias that would be a little bit easier in terms of care, in my opinion, because they don't crisp up and crumble and die the second that there's no water available. They will be a little bit more forgiving in terms of that. Whereas rhizomatous begonias grow from rhizomes, which are basically like modified stems. They're roots that kind of creep and they form kind of like mats. So if you've ever seen really fine begonia roots when you're repotting some of your begonias, this probably indicates that they are rhizomatous, and there are so many of these. They're really, really common. A lot of the Begonia rex varieties, which we're going to get into, are rhizomatous begonias. In general, these plants are terrestrials, epiphytic kind of shrubs that are generally on kind of the ground flora layer. So they are, a lot of the species wouldn't require really high levels of light, where they naturally grow in the wild that would have kind of partial shade to shade conditions. As I noted, there are like a huge, an unfathomable amount of cultivars of begonias that it's almost quite hard to track. It's quite hard to even figure out, if you know the name of the cultivar of your plant, which species it actually originated from. Like I said, these were first described in 1753, and they've been in like both outdoor and indoor cultivation for hundreds and hundreds of years, and People are making new cultivars all the time. They're really easy to mix together and create new cultivars, and obviously there are so many beautiful ones as well. People take elements of one plant and another plant and mix them together to make beautiful new varieties. And I guess what I would notice as probably the two that I've come across being that have the most cultivars are Begonia immaculata and Begonia rex. Now, that may be different for you. Maybe you've heard about different ones. Personally, that's what I seem to hear the most about. So Begonia rex is also known as the painted leaf begonia. And this was discovered in 1857, and its native range is from Bhutan to Myanmar. And it's really, really beautiful. I'll put up a picture on the screen for you, but I'm hoping that this picture kind of rings a bell for you. Like, there are a million different cultivars of Begonia rex that have all sorts of different venation, patterns, colors, hairy, not hairy, all of that type of stuff, and they're really, really beautiful. Begonia immaculata, on the other hand, is native to southeast Brazil and was first discovered in 1820. So this has a wet tropical biome, and Begonia rex does as well, but there are different sides of the world, and in general I think the Begonia immaculatas are a little bit easier to care for indoors. You may have also heard of cane begonias. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean any specific species or anything like that. They are just a group of cultivars and begonias that grow upwards. They have generally a cane-like growth habit, and they have, I'll show you when I show my own ones, but this can be a group of them, and a lot of the Begonia immaculatas are cane-like begonias, and they're quite easy to grow in my opinion. So that is a little bit of background on begonias just in general. So let's show you some of the species that I have and what my experience of them are. I will let you know which are cultivar and which are their own species. I have a kind of a mixture of both. So one of the first ones here I have is Begonia Linda Dawn. Now, this is a great example of a cane-like begonia. That's kind of the growth habit and structure that I'm talking about. It has kind of long stalks that the leaves come off of. And this plant used to look a lot hotter than it does now. I went through a lot of kind of leaf drop on the lower levels of these stems this summer when it got really hot in here, and I moved it as well to different light levels, and it's also getting a lot of highlight in the window in this room. That sometimes is a little bit too much for her, but I just let it suffer, I guess. So this is her. She is beautiful. If you've seen my channel before, you probably would have seen this plant. It has very deep red leaves. It has beautiful venation. It also has hairs on the leaves that are really, really beautiful, if you can see them there. It's just a really gorgeous autumny color, and I really enjoy this. It needs some help from me. It needs to be tied up a bit better. I might even cut it back a little bit, although we are getting some new growth down the stems, if you can see back here, and there's a lot of growth going on at the bottom as well. It's kind of reproducing on its own here. So yeah, it's also in a very small pot, but I find the cane begonias kind of like that in my experience. They grow well with that, but because of their growth habit and the fact that they grow upwards, I guess, they can get very kind of spindly, and they definitely need support. They need to be tied up because they will just get kind of out of control otherwise. But yeah, that is her, Begonia Linda Dawn. The next one is also a cultivar, and is one that unfortunately, I'm sad to say, I just don't care a lot about. It's terrible to say that, but it's a plant that I have never put a lot of time into. I'm not sure I even love the way that it looks. It was given to me as a cutting, and I just, if you know me at all, I find it very difficult to get rid of plants, which is something I'm working on. But yeah, so this is a cultivar of Begonia rex, and it is called Begonia rex Rondeau, and this is how it looks. just ignore this piece that's about to fall off. So this is how it looks. I'll cover my face here so you can see it does have beautiful patterns, but because of the complete neglect that it goes through, it's never really gotten bigger than this, to be honest. The patterns on the leaves during summer are much more pronounced and red, and then it gets kind of more green in the winter. I've actually recently just moved this plant because it was at the back of a shelf, which obviously is never a great place to put a small pot that you can't see. I just was missing it all of the time, and it's, like I said, it's really been neglected, but I think because I don't care for it very much, it's probably a sign that I should either give it away or just compost it, to be very honest. Yeah, it also is very hairy. I don't know if you can see that. It's a very hairy species or cultivar, and it is beautiful in its own right. I think it just doesn't suit me very much for some reason. The next plant I actually thought was its own species, but is not. It is another cultivar. This plant is currently getting just a little bit too much light, and there is a little bit of bleaching going on, but it's also growing a lot, so I'm unsure about that. But this is Begonia Griffin, and to be honest, this is definitely up there with one of my favorite begonias that I own. This is definitely a me type of begonia. It is just so... Okay, let's look at the leaves. It is so beautiful. It has amazing venation. It has a dark color. It is hairy. The leaf shape is just so beautiful. It is obviously a cane type of begonia from its growth habit. There is bleaching going on here and here. The new leaves come in really cute. If I can try and show you. Here, the new leaves come in really, really small, and they just gradually get bigger. And it's very easy to care for. It doesn't require a whole lot from me, and it's just freaking gorgeous. So I think if I'm going to end up getting more begonias in the future, I will stick to this kind of begonia, because these are the ones that excite me much more so than the Rondeau, poor Rondeau earlier. But yeah, it's really, really beautiful. It has a big, thick old stalk here, which is just massive. So it's quite hardy, and it deals well with a little bit of neglect. Like, it can handle a little bit of drying out. It won't totally crisp up immediately, and it's beautiful. What else? It also has like little hairs, which I don't know if you can see or not. But yeah, it is just so beautiful. One of my faves for sure. The next plant is actually its own species, and is one that it's up there with, I think there's one or two begonias in my collection that are a little bit more difficult to care for and are actually doing pretty well right now. The thing about begonias is sometimes you can look at them wrong and then they just die. And there is one huge reason why I haven't gotten into them very much. But this one I'm very proud of. This is Begonia masoniana, and hello, beautiful, 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 beautiful. This is probably the most textured begonia that I own, and I mean, she's giving texture, she is giving fur, she is giving, what else is she giving? Can I even show you? Backs of the leaves, all red and amazing. Just unbelievable. Look at those hairy petioles. The colors on the leaves. It looks like a painting. It looks like not real. I feel like it belongs in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So this plant is native to China area all the way over to Vietnam, and was first discovered in 1971, and that's not that long ago. This plant has only been around like the last 50 or so years, which is pretty new in terms of plants, and to be honest, it is just so beautiful. It is a little bit more tricky to care for. I think that it any plants from that region of the world, China, Vietnam, I generally find a little bit more difficult to deal with. I think it's the balancing the temperature and humidity level to replicate that habitat is quite difficult where I live in Ireland, which is generally a little bit more cold and I guess fluctuates quite a bit. I don't know if this is a lowland species or not, but I feel like it probably is. But yeah, that is her, one of my proudest for sure. I'm so afraid of it. It gets overwatered pretty easily, but at the same time cannot deal with drying out whatsoever. Like, it just immediately crisps up at the edges of the leaves. So it is a little bit more tricky, but so worth it, in my opinion. The next one, I actually have no idea what this is. I just have it as a Begonia spa, and this is her. If you may have seen her in, I've had her in a favorites video for sure in the last couple of months, but I just have this down as Begonia spa, but I assume that it's a cultivar of Begonia maculata, these ones with the spotted leaves and that kind of growth habit. It's probably a cultivar of one of that. As you can see, this was under my Spider Farmer grow light for quite some time, and this was just way too much light for this plant. Like I said, they generally prefer a little bit more shade conditions. They are not generally high light type of species, and I just left it there for way too long. So as you can see, the difference in this new leaf, which is the right color and pattern and beautiful, and the other ones are just totally bleached. Now, it grew pretty fast still under that light. It wasn't like suffering other than the bleaching, but I have since moved it and it seems much happier just on the shelf below. So I don't know what this is, and it's tiny. Like, it's really, really small, but it's really cute. And I hope that it grows big and tall. And if it flowers, maybe that will help me figure out what it is. I'm not too sure. If any of you are more versed in Begonia cultivars than I am, please let me know what this is if you do know. And if you have any further questions about it to help with the ID, I'm happy to help. But yeah, I'd love to figure out what it is, but it doesn't matter. It's still beautiful. This next one is a total oldie in my collection. I've had this one for a couple of years now, and it definitely featured heavily on the channel in the beginning of 2020. And it's one that it just has my heart, this plant. It's just one of my favorites. And that is Begonia Black Fang, the gothic of them all, the most gothic ever. So let's take a look at how amazing. It's still to this day I just love everything about this plant. I love the shape of the leaves. I love the red petioles. I love that it's hairy. I love that there's kind of green and amazing veination in the center of the leaf. It is pointy. It is easy to care for. The new leaves come in really cute. Some of them are really kind of spirally, if you know what I mean, which reminds me of the Fibonacci sequence. It is just so beautiful. This is having a little bit of trouble. One thing I will say is that I struggle with the support of this plant. The growth habit is a little bit mad, and it's kind of hard to keep up with. I have tried so many times to kind of hold it up, and it just doesn't want to do that. And so I've just kind of let it do whatever, but I am at risk of this part in particular falling off, which I hope doesn't happen, but it may happen. So it's really easy to care for. It is a cultivar of what I assume is Begonia rex. I have no idea really, but it is just so beautiful, and it will stay a favorite of mine for sure. If you don't know, I love Halloween and I love all of that stuff, and this is what this plant reminds me of. It's kind of scary, it's kind of spooky. I just feel like I know it's a cultivar, but I like to imagine what this would be like in the wild, and I think it would just be so exciting, even though that would never happen. But yeah. So that is that. That is her. Oh, also the petioles like have a pattern on them as well. They are not just red, if you know what I mean. Will that ever focus enough? Yeah, you can kind of see there. Like they have speckles. It looks like it might be poisonous or something. Very, very cool. It's in this white pot and it drapes over really nicely. I actually think in hopefully our new house, I would love for this to be up high and just on its own, because it's just such a statement plant. The next begonia in my collection is actually its own species and is the second plant that I'm really proud of in terms of being able to keep it alive, just like the Masoniana, and that is Begonia luxurians. I have also had this plant for quite a while, probably as long as the Black Fang, but it has been far less successful. I mean, it's successful now, but it has been far less successful over the long term. I have been through a lot with this plant. When I first got it, I actually found it was quite easy to take care of, but this is a plant that cannot be dry for 5 freaking seconds or it will just die. The leaves just crisp up. It just cannot handle not having water. The roots are super, super fine, and it just cannot put up with any hardship. However, it was getting to a point where I had it in a small terracotta pot and I could not keep up with the watering and it was suffering, so I decided to repot it. And some of you may know that begonias are they don't deal with change very well, and if they do encounter a change, it can take them a really, really long time to recover if they survive that change. Now, often if you repot a begonia, they will just throw a tantrum, they could die, they could just totally freak out, and I was really nervous about doing it, but I decided to put it in a plastic pot that was a little bit bigger so that it wouldn't dry out as often. And this, when I tell you, this plant has probably taken maybe well over a year to recover from that repotting. And in general, the soil mix, I didn't change completely. I didn't disturb the roots. I was very, very careful about it, and it still had a massive problem. It's only in the last month or two that it has been like, okay, I'm happy here. Let's start growing, and thankfully that has gone pretty well. So let's show you what she looks like. Definitely one of my favorites in terms of how it looks, which is why I've put up with how difficult it is. The leaves are extremely flimsy and light, which also indicates that they cannot put up with no water. They have kind of serrated edges and all these teeny tiny little hairs on them, and in general, if it's been too dry, it will start to crisp up at the end, which is happening here even though it hasn't been dry for a long time. And so the new growth is just like most begonias, comes out very small, very tiny, and then just gradually gets bigger, and it's just so beautiful and delicate. I really, really love it. But it can cause quite a bit of stress. So that is up to you if you want to get this plant and try. I think that this would do best in a greenhouse, hot, humid, beautiful terrarium environment. Now, obviously it does grow quite tall because it's a cane begonia, so you'd have to think about that in a terrarium, but I think that's where it would be most happy. But like I said, it has turned a corner, and so I'm really, really happy about that and hope that it continues to grow and now won't dry out as much, hopefully. But that is her. Oh yeah, and it's its own species, which I didn't fully get into. And this is native to southeast Brazil and was first discovered in 1848, so it has been around for a while. I would love to see pictures of this in the wild. Because there are so many cultivars and things, it is difficult to find pictures of begonias in the wild, which is a bit unfortunate, but I will try to find one to include here. So there are only 2 plants left, and both of them are a cultivar of Begonia maculata, and this will show you, like, this is probably the most common begonia, to be honest. This plant is generally down in the kitchen. It is very tall. I don't know how to fit it in the video, but let's show you. Also known as an angel wing begonia, this is Begonia maculata YTI, and it is quite tall. can't even show it all. There you go. It is very tall. And we have many stalks going on. Don't want to touch the ceiling. Many stalks. This is what the leaves look like. They have white spots on them. They're very beautiful. The backs of the leaves are kind of red. If you can see, some of the newer growth is more red. Really, really beautiful. And it's pretty tall. And it grows very fast. Quite easy to take care of. There's a reason it's really common. It's so interesting looking, and it is so easy to take care of. It's really easy to propagate. If you cut it, it will branch out. It's just, I mean, it's just a classic there for a reason. So I told you about Begonia maculata already. This is the whitey-eye cultivar that is quite cheap, common, widely available. Like I said, for a reason. Yeah, there isn't much else to say about this. It is definitely not one of my favorites. I think it's nice. I think it's nice, but it's not like amazing, if you know what I mean. It needs to be cut. It needs to be cut again because it's getting super, super tall. And to be honest, I would probably just cut it, root it in water and plant it back down at the bottom, which I've done a few times already. And a last look at one of the newest leaves. Spotty and cool. So that is her. Careful with that. The next one is so big, I don't even know. It's in such a huge pot as well. I am not going to take it down. I will put in some B-roll here instead. This is Begonia maculata snowcap. So the cultivar name is snowcap. It has much bigger leaves, and it has, I mean, it just, in general, just kind of has bigger leaves. But really, really big leaves. And it's really beautiful. Again, another cultivar of Begonia maculata, but I love it. It's just kind of bigger on all levels. The stems are much thicker and bigger. Internodal spacing is generally bigger, and it grows, it's just big, and it's in a big pot as well, because I honestly just could not keep up with how fast this plant grew, and I'm not sure if I want to keep it in my collection actually because of that, because it's just too big, and it's not, it takes up a lot of space, grows really fast. I'm constantly cutting it back. I literally just cut it this morning again. Actually here, yeah, here's a cutting that I'm waiting to dry off before I put in water. But yeah, like the leaf, this leaf isn't even the biggest. It's really, really big, covers my face. I mean, it's beautiful. It's just maybe a bit too big for me. In terms of like how much space it takes up, and it's definitely not one of my favorites. So I don't know if that is worth it. So that is every begonia I have in my collection. There's quite a variety there. I think it's probably clear what my favorites are. I like the weird ones. Maybe not Rondeau, even though it is a weird one. I don't know why I don't like that as much. The Black Fang, Masoniana and Luxurians are probably up there with my favorites, as well as the Griffin. God, I can't pick. But those kind of, I think I like the little bit spookier, darker ones with some really interesting texture and kind of pointy leaves. That's really the type of begonia I feel that I go for. I do see a lot of begonias online that I would like to get. Some of them are a little bit out of the price range that I would like to spend on some, but it's definitely something that I'll look into. I don't think that I would probably get more versions of begonia, cultivars of Begonia Rex that are commonly found in garden centres. They just don't really appeal to me that much. I kind of like a lot of the weirder versions, if you know what I mean. If you have species or cultivars that you think that I would like based off this selection, please let me know in the comments below, and I would love to check them out. If you know ones that I'm not aware of, I'd love to research them and see if I'd like to get them. So that is a kind of an overview of begonias in general and every plant in my collection and what I think of them. If you did like this video, please give it a like, and if you enjoy my content and would like to see future videos, please subscribe to the channel so you can be notified every time I upload. As well as that, I do have a Patreon, and I would like to thank my patrons for this month. In the species tier, we have Grace, Siobhan and Yendi. In the genus tier, we have 2 Amy's, and thank you very much from this Amy. And in the family tier, we have Michael. Thank you so much for your support, guys, this month. It really means the world to me. If any of you are interested in joining my Patreon, the link is at the bottom of the screen, and it's also linked in the description, and you can get access to patron-only polls, text posts from me, as well as bonus content, bonus videos every month. Thank you so much for your support as always, and I also want to say to all of my subscribers, thank you so much. I have just reached 6,000 subscribers, and it is a big number to me, honestly, and I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed this process, and your continuous support week on week means more than you could imagine, honestly. So thank you guys. I'm looking forward to continuing with the content, and as always, if there's something particular you want to see from me, just drop it in the comments and I'll add it to my video list. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you very soon in the next one. Bye.